Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of TalkFlow. This is episode 18. And today, what we're going to be talking about is whether you should be a freelancer, a employee, or should you own an agency. And I think a lot of people, when they're first starting out, many people start off as a freelancer and then they either, become, they either work for another agency and become an employee, or they go the other route where they start their own agency and hire people. And there's both of them are two very different routes, and it all depends on what you want and what you're looking for. And today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of each and which one is best for you. So, yeah, Roman, do you
Cool.
have anything to add to that, or
Do you have any disclaimers? I think the main one is just
yeah?
it's pretty again based on our experience and what
Hmm.
we go through and what we can think of. Clearly, we're not old enough to sort of tell you which is the right way to do and which is the wrong way to
Yeah,
go. But I think being an employee, being a freelancer, and also a small agency owner, we can sort of tell you the pros and cons of each, and hopefully help people make the best decision.
yeah, and again, it just depends on your goals.
Yeah,
Like, what do you want?
situation. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and we'll get into that. But again, this is just from our personal experience. I think a lot of people, I think even from what you agree that a lot of people think that freelancer and agency is the only route.
Yeah, that's
A lot of people sometimes
yeah,
they don't think that they want to be an employee because they look down upon. But sometimes
yeah.
that is actually the better choice.
To be fair, I used to be at that position as well. Like, oh, why would you be an employee? Like, oh, you can be a freelancer, you can make so much more money. You're not tied down to one company. But the more you sort of do this, and also I forced myself to be employed at one point just to see how it is, because I've never been employed anywhere, and it it sort of taught me a lot of things in the sense that it is stable. You don't have to worry about, oh, will they pay me for the work that I'm doing? They are legally obliged to pay you. And again, I think it goes into a lot of the pros and cons. We'll get into it, but like
Yeah.
it sort of taught me a lot of the things that we sort of discount because being an employee
Mhm.
is not cool enough. But yeah, I think we can talk about it once we get into the topic, about the
Yeah,
pros
and
and
one more
cons.
thing is like I've never been employed in my life. So it's
Yeah,
like I can't really speak
you,
on,
you,
what it's like to
yeah,
be an
you
employee.
sort of can say the cons of like why
Yeah,
you think being an employee sort of doesn't feel right, whereas I
yeah,
can then counter that argument with the experience that I've had.
right. Yeah, and I've, I obviously know people who have been employees and stuff. And I worked in agencies that have employees while I'm a freelancer, so I kind of
Yeah,
know a little bit,
and I
but
think
I don't
like
have first-hand
again
experience.
in the Webflow space, I think again most people are probably employed. We only
Right,
see
yeah.
freelancers because freelancers are required to like sort of market themselves and show their work. But I would assume at least 70-80% of the people are actually employed as a Webflow
Hmm.
developer somewhere at some company or an agency.
Yeah, that's right. Anyways, let's get straight into the pros of being an employee. And I think Van Marlin, you should take over this topic.
I think the main pro is just the stability that you get out of it. Like every month, you know there's a paycheck that's just coming, and you don't have to
Hmm.
worry about it or stress about it. And especially if the pay is good, then you sort of covered your monthly expenses and all that crazy stuff. You just got to save. And again, being a freelancer, you have to think about all this extra things like, oh, am I getting enough sale, or how much my expenses, how much tax am I going to pay? Whereas in the UK, if you're an employee, the money that you get is already taxed. You already paid your pension. It's your net income. And that is so, it was a lot stress free. Like every month, I just, even if I don't have to worry about, oh, what if I have no clients? Because I at least have that salary as a base to go off with my monthly expenses and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the main pros of being an employee. It's just the pay is constant. But I would also argue that the more you start to work with a team, that sort of becomes a pro of being an employee. And I'm seeing it myself firsthand, because once you have people sort of come together and work, they actually talk to each other and they share a lot of the things. And it's a way for you to bounce off ideas, or while you're just chatting, you sort of find something that you guys can do together. And that sort of that is missing when you're a freelancer, because most of the time you're just with yourself alone with your thoughts, maybe one other person that you talk to. But when you're being an employee, it's like being with friends, sort of, isn't it? Like, and the thing is, all of you sort of relate to one common thing, which is Webflow, and one problem somebody has, and you find a solution to it. You can either share it with them, and that also sort of becomes a thing where you can share with other people as well. There's a lot of things that open up because you're part of a team. And another thing is also, if you're part of a bigger team, you can sort of leverage another person's expertise. So if someone is a great designer but you are not, it's a lot easier just to go to them and like, hey man, I need help with this, and they will probably help you because it's a team, isn't it? And vice versa, right? If somebody wants you to sort of do something with Webflow, or they don't know something, you can sort of teach them. And there's a lot of collaboration that goes on as a part of a
Yeah.
team, which is a
Mhm.
main. I would say it's one of the biggest thing of being an employee and
Yeah,
being
and
part
I
of.
think it's like some people enjoy that collaboration,
I
but
think
some people
everyone would.
don't. Yeah,
I
I mean
think
it is
everyone would.
fun, but
It
some people enjoy working together, but then there's other people. I think,
No, I'm not
um,
saying like working together is like two
mm,
or three people work on the same project. It's just
yeah,
like, for example, in Slack, what I have right now is just a small group of freelancers. It's
hmm,
nice to see people sort of share their
right, yeah,
doubts, or they just take a screenshot of something that they're working on, and they're like, hey, how do I do this, or how does this look? And somebody chips in
hmm,
and like, oh, that looks great, man. Oh, can you add this instead because of this, blah blah blah. It's nice to sort of see and sort of build this thing. And also team calls, right? I used to hate it because I feel like it's such a waste of time. But when talk people actually join and they actually discuss things, and they let you speak and share your ideas, it's also nice to
yeah,
be heard, and also hear other people's opinions and stuff like
yeah.
that.
And I think is also part of your personality as well. Like it depends on that. Like I think for one agency we took a personality test. I'm not sure if you've done it, but
Yeah, I
like
did, yeah.
some people are like commanders, some people are, you know, I don't know what the other ones. I was
What
a
is yours?
commander. I was a
What's yours?
commander.
Oh shit, I'm a
Commander, yeah.
defender.
Oh right, yeah. So it's like some people are
Yeah,
commanders, some people are whatever, right? So it also
yeah.
depends. Like for example, myself, I
We should do
like
a
being a
podcast on just that, isn't it? Personality type.
yeah, I think I like being a leader. Like I like, managing, and I'm more focused on I more enjoy the business and marketing side of things, like
Right,
bringing
yeah.
clients in rather
Mm.
than being in the nit and gritty and getting stuff done. Um,
Right, yeah,
so
that
it's like also, but
experience.
then some people is the opposite. Some people rather not like they don't
Yeah,
like
yeah,
doing
it
the
really
marketing
depends
and
on
getting clients. They
on what
rather
you
just do
want.
the stuff. So
Yeah,
again, it
but
depends on personality.
yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
And
and
the
I think a
last one,
great example is Harshit as well.
yeah,
I
that's
yeah,
why
we done
I told in
yeah.
the podcast itself, like, it's a very rare thing to hear people give up their freelance or like their agency potential just to be
Hmm.
to work at a company. But that shows how much power being an employee has, because
Yeah,
you get to explore things that you otherwise wouldn't do it, because it is
right.
expensive. You got to pay for it if you're a freelancer or an agency. Whereas if
Yeah.
you are an employee, you, within the bounds of your employer, you're pretty much free to do whatever you want, test out things,
Hmm.
do some new things, test out your ideas. And that's how, like, for example, FinSuite has a great team, and that allows them to build like really cool tools because people are really passionate about it. Right? If
Yeah.
you look at Alex Iglesias, when he does all this code stuff, like this extension and all these amazing code things, he really must feel like he's valued, and he's such a
Hmm.
valuable member of the team for him to stay there and continue his work, rather
Yeah.
than take it out and hold it back and do it, to grow his own brand.
Yeah.
Which, again, it comes down to how good the company sort
Hmm.
of treats you, and
Yeah. The team
how
environment and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, the team
Yeah.
vibe is
That yeah, that's probably the
essential.
biggest thing, you know what I mean? So, and
Yeah,
I think it's also like some people just don't want to face the stress of managing clients and all of that stuff, like dealing with the revisions. And I kind of
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like that sometimes. Sometimes
yeah.
I feel
It's
like
a lot.
agency work is the best work because
Yeah,
you
because
don't
they
have to
deal
deal
with
with the
all the.
revisions. You just do what you got to do, and that's it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
some
and
people
that's
enjoy
that's
that.
the
Yeah.
that's the main. I think before I go to that, I think the one last pro of being an employee is also
Hmm.
finance, bro. Like, you don't have to worry about
Yeah.
tax, you don't have to worry about pension, you don't have to worry about your national insurance, nothing like that. You just get your pay, spend it, save it, burn it, whatever you want. You have to do it.
Hmm.
You don't have to worry about anything else. As well as being an employee comes with perks that are not monetary, like your insurance, your private insurance.
Yeah.
You get access. like a budget for training. You get a budget,
Mm-hmm.
you get team lunches and stuff like that. You might even get a computer from the company.
Yeah.
And you
But again, it depends on the company, isn't it? So you find the
even
right
on very,
company.
yeah,
Yeah.
if it's a good company, most companies sort of give you all these perks. You get paid time leave, you get sick days, you get vacation days. Sometimes they give you remote hours, remote options. There's so much extra that being a
Mm-hmm.
freelancer doesn't give. For example, sick days, right? When you're sick as a freelancer, you're just losing money, honestly speaking.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're an employee, you're still paid for the days where you're sick, or you're even
Yeah.
paid like 30 days to go on a break or some shit like that. You get,
Yeah.
depends how much the company you know gives holidays, but most companies give you
Yeah.
like, I think, 4 weeks or 3 weeks of paid leave, which is a lot if you think about it. But you can't do that
Yeah.
as a freelancer, right? You
Yeah.
have to pretty much fund yourself to enjoy, which is
Yeah.
why a lot of freelancers get burnt out, because they don't have the incentive to sort of take a break.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, Vimola, I remember you mentioned one time is like once when if you're an employee, you only work from that after 5 o'clock, you have no stress, to be honest. But
And
if you're like a
honestly,
freelancer and you have your own thing, it's like constantly like stress. It's like there's
it
endless
is
worries, you know.
it is
But
it is
with the employee after 5, that's it, you're done.
Yeah,
So
right. And I felt that firsthand, because when I first joined the job, after 5, Slack is empty. Nobody's
yeah.
messaging you on Slack. Nobody's emailing you. You don't
Mm.
have to be online after
But then at
5.
9 a.m. you just get spammed. But
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like that's I mean, but it's the same with being a freelancer. But the thing is, because you're a freelancer, you work with companies all around the globe. You're
mhm,
pretty much just bombarded 24/7. For me, like, I swear to God, I'm still on Slack at like 11 p.m. just
yeah,
like chatting with clients or like checking emails, which is so unhealthy. But being an employee, you are rarely expected to do that. You're never expected
yeah,
to do that. And
mm,
weekends, right? You can literally just leave your laptop, your phone, and your tablet, and just leave your house. And we come back on a Monday, nothing happens. But it's so hard
mhm,
to do it as a freelancer, because you're like, shit, what if somebody's having a crisis or
yeah.
like an emergency, or like a lead comes in? It's
Or if
very,
you're marketing and all of this stuff,
yeah,
it's
you're
like,
always thinking of like, oh, what else do I do? What clonables do I do? What else do I do on the
oh,
project?
I had this
Or
yesterday, man.
it, yeah, it's like so much extra work that you got to think about,
Yeah,
which is why I mean, it's all cons of freelance, which we'll
hmm,
get to quickly. But
yeah,
yeah, what are the cons of being an employee? Like, what do you
yeah.
think are
The
the
cons.
cons?
I think, I mean, to be honest, the cons are pretty much is like I think is all relative to your personality. I think for me, I mean, I think being an employee is great. I don't, respect every employee. I think the benefits are, great. But I think for me, my intrinsic value of not being an employee is a lot higher than actually being an employee. For example, is that I rather have my own thing. I rather build something from the ground up. Even logically, if it's harder, if I don't get enough, like if financially is not as great in the first couple of years, I'd rather take that on just because I find it intrinsically valuable to build something and have something that I can call mine and grow. And I just like the hustle. And yeah, I think it's all about personality. Like on paper, being an employee is actually better if you actually think about it. We mentioned all the pros and stuff. But I
Yeah.
think yeah, so you can't really argue that being a freelancer on agency is better on paper. It's all about how you feel like as a person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so yeah, that's one con, is like, if you're somebody who wants to build something on your own, being an
Hmm.
employee sort of takes away that power. Though, again, taking big companies like Apple and Google as an example, if you want to build something on your own and you can take ownership in an existing company, that is also very similar. Like, for example, if let's take Apple, isn't it? Like, if you're a chief design engineer, like you're the main person who designs the products, you're more successful at Apple when you're designing MacBooks and iPhones, rather than you go off on your own and start doing that yourself, right? Like, again, it comes down to the thing of like, there's more resources at hand. There's a lot more money that you can spend at hand. Whereas being a freelancer or an agency, you sort of fund it yourself, and it's very difficult to f- to sort of justify that for uh, that expense. Another con for me, I
Yeah,
think, is also the pay is pretty much capped, and that was
yeah,
the main issue I sort of
that's another thing. Yeah,
had to
yeah,
battle. Is like, you can pretty much do all like all the work. You can do like 4 projects in 1 month and you still get paid the same, which
Mhm.
for me, I just feel like it's very unfair in this industry, especially when you're working on
Mhm.
so many different products. I get it from a business standpoint. It makes a lot more sense to hire somebody full time because your overhead is capped maxed out at that much, and you can
Mhm.
use their time to the maximum for whatever you're paying.
Yeah.
It is fair. It makes sense. But as an employee, you sort of at one point you might end up feeling like, oh, I'm just being overworked, or I'm just being
Yeah.
worked so much and I'm still not getting compensated for it,
Mhm.
even though it's still within the agreed upon time. Let's say it's 40 hours a week. You are still working 40 hours a week, but within the 40 hours, because we're so used to things being project by project, we often feel like, oh, I've done this and this and this. There's 3 projects. I could have been paid like 3 times, but rather
Mhm.
as an employee, I'm only paid once, which
Mhm.
is maybe a mindset because I came from a freelancer transition to an employee. That
Right.
mindset still couldn't leave me. But I think most people don't really battle with it because they never had the freelance experience, right? Most
Yeah.
people sort of go from employee to freelance rather than freelance to employee.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but one, yeah,
yeah, that's a good point. Like your pay is capped, and I think another thing is as well, like sometimes it does get annoying being an employee as well. For example, like I mean, it depends on the company as well. Some companies are great, but then some companies, especially in the industry, they is it's annoying when they tell you what to do. It's like do this, do that, do that, and that can get annoying.
yeah. Like for
So some
example,
people don't
in
like it when they get told what to do.
no,
Yeah.
like being very specific to Webflow, when you become an employee, there's a high chance that you get thrown a lot of this petty work of like, hey,
Mhm.
can you fix this? Can you fix that? Can you jump on this and just tweak this one little image, or like and stuff like this? You're just like, "Oh, it's not such a good use of my time, even though you are paid to do it, but it's
Mhm.
just pesky little things that you got to do, or like you, because they're paying you, they might end up taking up projects that necessarily they don't want to do, but
Mhm.
because it's still cheaper than.
But then, okay, I got a question.
Yeah.
So let's say you're doing this pesky work, right, that you don't really feel like doing.
Mm.
But if you switch out that work for something that you actually enjoy doing, like some creative work, but you're getting paid the same amount, you know what I mean? So, but if you weren't a
Yeah.
freelancer, you'll be getting paid very different, right? It's like you'll be getting paid quite a lot for the creative work, but then with the pesky work, you won't really charge much. So it's like, do you understand what I mean? Or
No, like what do you mean? Like,
mm.
can you repeat that again one
So,
more
for
time?
example, it's like how you said you're doing pesky work, right, as an employee,
Yeah.
and if you switch out that pesky work, for example, with something that you enjoy doing,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
get paid the same amount for doing the pesky work as you are with the
Yeah,
creative work, right? But then as a
yeah.
freelancer, because you don't like doing the pesky work, you can just charge, let's say, the same
Or you
amount as
won't even
being an
take it
employee.
on. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
won't even take it on, or you charge very little, or you can do the creative work and you can charge very highly, and that's what you can focus on. Whereas an employee, you kind of don't really have a choice in that sense.
Again, yeah, that really comes on to how the company sort of treats
Mhm.
you. Like I think a really successful, especially in the Webflow space, is literally letting the employee slash freelancer sort of figuring out what they want to do, right? Like you get them to do what they want to do rather than what you want them to do. Like that is a different method to what most other agencies, like a coding agency or like a WordPress agency, would do. Is just they get you and they tell you what to do. But
Mhm.
with, I think after when you and I think FinSit, again, I bring them a lot because it- the they have so much unique takes on like management and company and team
Yeah.
that I swear to God they should just write a book. But the way they, and I think Joe mentions it a lot, is that they bring in talent and they let them and they let them to figure out what they want to do,
Mhm.
right? Like for example, I don't think Joe tells Rema to go and build a Webflow site because Rema is so interested in marketing and really doing these streams and all this community stuff, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure he's not gonna tell Harshit to go and make videos because maybe Harshit doesn't want to do it, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
you you can't really force or tell people what to do. You let sort of, but that comes at a cost of like you got to
Yeah.
trust them, which most
Mhm.
companies don't want to do. But if
Yeah.
you do, you get people bringing their A game because they really want to prove that they are worth being
Right.
trusted.
Yeah.
Again, all of this comes down to being which company you're working for and what
Yeah.
principles that they
So it's
follow.
like what FinSuite does is that they fit the freelancer around the agency rather than the agency around the freelancer, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the company. So if a company doesn't do that and they're a lot more corporate,
most
then that's
companies
a
don't.
con, right?
Yeah.
But then if they're like if they're a good company, then that is a pro in
Yeah.
that
That's
sense
why I
because they
think
will let
FinSuite
you,
sort of
you
stands
know,
out in the whole industry
definitely.
because
And that's why
they
everyone
really.
wants to work for FinSuite as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I think they really do a lot more interesting stuff than most. There's so many agencies out there, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows FinSuite, and they really found a niche because again it comes down to the company culture of like really having people, a team that really wants to work for them and really want to build something as a part of a team, right? But if,
Mm-hmm.
if the opposite happens, if let's say you get people but everybody's a freelancer and they just want to build their own thing, that's
Mm-hmm.
they're not gonna help build the FinSuite
Yeah.
pyramid. They're gonna build their small, again this whole team thing sort of becomes its own chapter. But like if
Yeah.
you're one person in like a 50-person team, together you can build a bigger pyramid. Whereas if you're a one
Mm-hmm.
person in a small team, you will build something, but it won't be like a pyramid. It'll be a small, tiny little house or like a
Circle.
hut
Yeah.
or something like that. Really depends on what your mentality is, right? Like some people really want to build something big, and to build something big, you need to be part of a team. That's a fact. You can't
Mm-hmm.
build it on yourself. You can't build alone, right? You can't run FinSuite as one person, right? You need 50 people to run it, and
Mm-hmm.
every person in the team is valuable, right?
Yeah.
And I
That's
think
right.
that we're
Yeah.
going way too much. Let's come back to freelancers.
Yeah, freelancer.
Like,
So like just a summary, I think is like if you want to be an employee, again, it depends on the company, but just for context, let's say the company's a good company, whatever.
yeah.
I think if you want to be I think the type of person that should be an employee is a person that firstly enjoys collaborating.
No,
Secondly, they
I think one sentence that could wrap up is:
okay,
do you want, if you want to be the best Webflow developer and you want to be the best Webflow developer, go join a company, get paid monthly, and explore Webflow at their cost. That's it.
right.
Like for example, if let's say you really want to be someone like Timothy Ricks, there's no way in hell you're going to do it as a freelancer because you're limited by client work, you're limited by how much clients you can get,
Mm,
you're limited by how much budget they give you
yeah.
to explore. Whereas,
It's like you if you've been an employee, you're
yeah,
only focusing on doing your best job. You're not
yeah,
focusing on the
you're
rest of the
doing
stuff
one
like
job and you can
yeah.
be the freaking best at the
Mm.
one specific
It's like,
specialization
yeah,
thing.
if yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
we'll get into the cons of freelance stuff. But it's like master or
that
jack of
is
all
like,
trades, master or none.
yeah,
But
that's
with an
the
employee,
peak
you can be a
of being
master
an
of one thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be a specialist. Like you'll be so valuable that the company would keep paying you more and more and more to keep you in, rather than, again, Timothy, right? He still works for 365. Is that a company? Yeah,
Not 368.
368. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, 36 why is it 368? Anyways, yeah, he's part of that
I don't
company,
know.
isn't it? I'm sure he's being compensated for a lot because he's so creative and he
Mm-hmm.
uses Webflow so freaking well that
Mm-hmm.
as a freelancer, if he started off as a freelancer, he wouldn't, I wouldn't say he wouldn't, but it's very difficult to get there because
Yeah, because
he's
you
not
wouldn't
being,
have enough time to invest
yeah,
in,
and he wouldn't
his
have the
work. You know what
sort
I
of
mean? So
resources. Yeah, like
yeah.
as a team, again, he can pull people from different parts and ask for opinions, and he can bring his specialization, which is Webflow. Another can
Mm-hmm.
bring their specialization. Maybe it could be graphic design. Another person could be web design, and they all merge to build something great,
Yeah.
which is, I think, wraps up this subtopic of being an employee,
Yeah.
which is
That's
not
good, man.
really spoken about by most people.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So then now the next topic is the pros of being a freelancer. And I just want to say one thing before we get into the pros, right? I think being a freelancer is kind of being in the middle of an employee and an agency because it's like, yes, you are focused on your work. But so being an agency owner is like you're 100% focused. You're like right at the top, right? You have team members that do the work. You're the person who's managing everything in a way. I mean, that's what happened. That's what happened when you actually become a proper agency. And being an employee is the opposite of that, where you let the higher staff, that would take care of itself from, your managers and the CEO, whatever, and you're focused on the bottom of the funnel stuff, actually delivering the project. But I think being a freelancer is like you're in the middle and you're balancing between the both, right? Like you're trying to do your best work, like being an employee, but you're
Yeah.
also trying to manage everything and get clients and do marketing and do the processing stuff, and that is falls into the agency side of things.
Yeah.
So
I
I
think
mean
I think
that could be a pro in itself, but yeah.
the biggest pro is just money. Like
Yeah,
of
money is
tax,
like you keep
you
100%
will
of
be
it.
paid
Yeah.
more as a freelancer
Yeah,
than you are
100%, yeah.
as an
Hmm.
employee. But again, when people say this, I'm always like, yeah, but again, you're not being compensated for your tax and you have to pay your tax, you got to pay your insurance, you got to pay your private insurance, your sick days. You
Yeah.
don't even count your time that you work on. Like most of the time, you're being overworked. It's
Hmm.
not 9 to 5 as a freelancer. You pretty much work the whole freaking day, and you're
Yeah.
definitely not charging the same rates as you would as an employee, which is a common misconception, right? Like for example, if one project you get £5,000, it's like wow, that's more than my job and my salary.
Yeah.
Great, but the project is going to be like
Hmm.
3 months, and you pretty much do every
Hmm.
single thing in that project, like from design, development, training, handoff, fixing, coding, all these
Hmm.
things. At the end of the project, you're just probably not even paid. You're probably making a
Yeah.
loss if you count your time in.
Yeah, that's true. But then at the
And
same time, just as a counter argument, you can work on like I mean you're getting into the cons here, but we're getting into
oh shit, sorry.
yeah. I mean, just as a counter, you can work on multiple projects at the same time. Like instead of
Yeah,
5K for one, you can get like 3, 4 projects and get paid like
yeah.
20K.
I think
So
flexibility being a
yeah,
freelancer is
and
just
another thing is like you have full control over what you do. For example, if a client comes to you and you don't like them for whatever reason, right? And this was on our last episode of what was the last
yeah,
episode again?
yeah,
Yeah, how to deal with stressful clients.
yeah.
Because like even if you don't like a client at all, for whatever reason, right? Let's say they come with a low budget, you can just say no,
You can
and
say no,
you
or
have 100% control over who you work with, and yeah,
and
I think that's the best thing
that's
as well.
again comes under con of being an employee as well, because a
Mm,
pro being a freelancer is, if let's say they give you something that's gonna take a lot of time to build, and it's just a small part of a website. As a freelancer, you have all the power to say, hey, look, that's gonna take way more time than necessary to build it, and it doesn't cover in the budget and the cost. Are you happy to scrap it off? Whereas in an employee, you sort of can't say that to your employer, because you sort of feel like, they're already paying me for it. They're paying me to figure that out. I can't just be like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. Even because the only excuse for you to say no is because it's gonna take more work.
mm-hmm.
So again, you lose that power of choosing what you want to work with as an employee, but you get the power as a
Yeah,
freelancer.
and yeah, that's a good point. And another point is, I think, yeah, I already said full creative control. Yeah, and oh, I actually forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, okay, if you have any pros to say, that's fine. Otherwise, you can move into. I had a pro in mind, but I
I think
forgot it.
I think if you take all the cons of being an employee, it's probably the pros
Oh
of
yeah,
being
yeah,
a
that's right, that's
freelancer.
right. Yeah. Oh no, no, no. What was it? Yeah, and yeah. Let's move on to cons. I think we move on to cons. I had a
Yeah,
sick
sure.
pro, but I forgot. But anyway, move
Yeah,
on
it's
to cons.
fine.
So
Yeah.
another a con, bro. We always like me and Vama, we always chat about like the cons of being a freelancer. Oh yeah, sorry. Let's go back to pros. I remember. So another pro is you learn so much. Like you learn like I think if you want to learn and like you gain so many skills, you gain how to manage a business, how to market, how to sell, how to do this, how to like build processes. And I think you learn so much skills. I think that's such a huge bonus because you can use that in, for example, like let's say because you experience everything, right? You experience what it's like to be a part agency owner as well as an employee. So, for example, if you enjoy the development side of things, or you enjoy like the delivery process, you know for a fact, okay, fine, I will enjoy being an employee. But if you like the other side of things, like the top of the funnel stuff, like marketing and doing all of that stuff, and you got skills in that, you can easily transition into an agency. That makes sense. So I think that's another pro. You learn a lot, and you kind of experience everything. Like you experience being an employee as well as an agency. If that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's another benefit as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's move into cons. So cons, bro, we can go on for ages, but I think the main thing is like, um, is a lot of people say like freelancer, yeah, you work for yourself, but let's be honest, like you freelancers, you
You
get
work for the
clients and
client.
you're working
Yeah.
for the client. So
Yeah.
and that comes in. There's so many cons with that. I mean, it's great that you have your own business and you sell your own service, but at the end of the day, all freelancers work for someone, and that someone is your clients.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that one con that I can think of right now is um clients can burn you out for sure. It's like, so you can, I mean, we talked about this previously, but you can get some terrible clients, and they can make the experience of being a freelancer just terrible. And yeah, I mean that you can get bad clients. That's like one con as well.
Yeah, and again, stress, right? You
Stress.
always
Oh my
gotta
god, bro.
gotta
It's
be
like,
on top.
bro, it's never stopping. Like you're 100 miles per hour all day, every day.
Yeah, and
It
and
don't
and even
stop.
when there's a break, you're like, oh, you feel so guilty for taking a
Yeah,
break
it's like
because
when things are going so well, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, it's
yeah,
busy.
yeah,
But then that's just another stress. But then as soon as it goes down, it's like,
yeah,
oh
which
shit, man,
is
why am I not doing
inevitable.
anything? It's like,
Yeah, it
yeah.
will happen. Like every freelancer or even every agency would sort of have this dot moments and that days where you just have nothing to do or you just have
Yeah.
not much to do. And as an employee, it's fine because you can pretty much chill and do something else. But as an agency or like a freelancer, you're like, oh my god, what am I
Yeah.
gonna do? Is this
Because for us
crashing
it's
down?
like, if you're not doing something, then you're not getting paid.
Yeah,
So
that's the
it's like,
thing.
yeah,
So
it's like, what are
it
you
is a
doing? And
con, right?
yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
and
just
that comes,
so, yeah.
and I think another con is also again the pros of being an employee is you don't have to worry about a lot of things, and as a freelancer,
Mm.
you got to worry about taxes and registering,
Oh yeah.
making sure your taxes are right, keep track of your income, your expenses, your receipts, what are you spending
Mm-hmm.
on, uh, and of course you got to pay for your insurance and your sick days, put some money aside when things get tough. There's a lot more things that you got to learn, and again, a pro of it is that you learn a lot of the things, but the
Mm-hmm.
cons of it is that yeah, as I say, you become the jack of all trades but master of none.
Yeah.
You are
Mm-hmm.
most definitely not the best Webflow developer out there,
Mm-hmm.
because you're just juggling so much that you just cannot put in the time and the effort to do one
Yeah.
specific thing. Um, yeah, that is fine because if you want to be a freelancer, you still need to be in your top game for sure, because otherwise no one's gonna hire you. But if you
Mm-hmm.
keep doing that for a very long time, you sort of seed into that thing of like you get stuck in that same
Mm-hmm.
repeating cycle of like clients, no clients, clients, no clients, clients, no
Mm-hmm.
clients, which is quite tough if you think about it, because sometimes
Yeah.
they're just like so busy and sometimes they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
I
just
think like the
the
only,
instability. Yeah.
yeah, I think we were chatting about this before. Is like the only, not the only, but the routes you can take after you're a freelancer is either you become an employee, an agency, or you can stick to being a freelancer. But most of the time is you're not going to stay the same. Like you're not going to be juggling everything. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you either have three routes, right? You have employee, an agency, or you become a high value freelancer where you just do like a couple of projects a year and they're very well paid. But to even get to that point, you have to do all of this stuff like building the client base and marketing and getting good at what you do. So it's like, I don't know, man. It depends on what you want. Would you agree, Vimal?
I think the high value freelancer it's almost closer to an agency, but it's just a
Right.
one person agency where you focus
Mm-hmm.
on one specific thing. Whereas being a freelancer, it's more of being an employee but off the hook, meaning that you just jump in, finish something, jump out, jump in somewhere, finish something, and jump out.
Mm-hmm.
Another con of that is most of the work that you do isn't your work. You know,
Mm,
unless specified, most of the work that you do is under an NDA or you just can't put it in your portfolio because it's a company site. And you have to, bounce some legal loopholes and find different ways to showcase the work that you do. Again, which is all the stress that you don't deal with being an employee, which is why I think
yeah.
there's this new hybrid sort of forming is people are freelancers, but they're freelancing for just one specific agency. And
Right. Yeah.
it is a gray area in the legally speaking. You
I mean,
technically
it
can't
depends
do
on the
that.
agency. If they allow you, then it's fine, right?
No, in the UK, you're not supposed to do it.
Is it? Oh,
There's a thing called IR 35,
oopsie daisy.
where
Yeah.
I mean it's a very legally gray area because the thing is it avoids people being exploited. So very
Mm-hmm.
quickly, IR 35 in the UK is basically a legal state where if you're a freelancer or a solo business and you're working for
Sole
another
trader. Yeah.
business,
Mm,
you have to prove that you're in business for yourself, meaning that's not the only client you work for, and they do not treat you as an employee, meaning you're not supposed to come for daily meetings or you know go to their office space and work every day. and all of this stuff. Because as an employee, you get again all these perks and benefits. Um, that besides that, the company also pays tax for the employee that you hire. You pay for their national insurance. But as a freelancer, the company doesn't pay that for you. They don't pay your tax, they don't pay your insurance, and they don't contribute to your
Mm.
pension. So it's a very easy thing for companies to be like, oh, you're just freelancing for us, but you're freelancing full time, meaning that nine to
Oh, right.
five, you dedicate all your time to us, but we only treat you as a freelancer without the
So who's getting
company.
exploited there? The freelancer, isn't it?
The freelancer is getting
Yeah.
exploited in the sense because you're not
Mm-hmm.
getting all the perks of being an employee, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in the UK, if you are being freelancer for a company, you can go to the government website and you fill out like a questionnaire, and it will tell you whether you fall within this category of being an exploited freelancer or not. And the main
Oh,
thing
damn.
is,
Oh.
yeah, so the main point is, if that company or an agency is the only company that you're working for, you're not a freelancer, right? You should be
Oh.
employed by them. Whereas in the States, they don't have that legal law. So one person can sort of be a freelancer, a contractor, and they can just work at the one company as their main sort of client, if you will. But in
Mm-hmm.
the UK, it's between this gray area of like, can they actually do that or not? But yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
a fun tidbit for the UK viewers.
Damn. That's
Yeah,
interesting, man.
it's worth checking out on like each wherever you're
Yeah.
watching. I think the UK and the EU is probably more stricter than most of the world, but it's good, man. Like,
Mm.
otherwise, I can imagine people just being like, "Ah, you're a freelancer, isn't it? Okay, cool."
But you,
And
yeah,
but
you
they
just
still
work
treat
for
you,
one person.
yeah, but they
Yeah.
treat you like an employee, like, oh, join the
Mm.
meeting, or like join this call, join that call. Oh, so,
Yeah.
9 to 5, you should be on your computer or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Even though and when you're sick, they're like, oh, why are you sick? And stuff like that.
Mm.
It gets very very gray very very quickly.
Yeah. Very toxic, man. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think just to summarize this for Manu, what would you think? Like, who would you recommend being a freelancer to?
For me, honestly, I feel like, I don't know, man. Like, the more more I work, the less I think freelancers is good. But like, I seen both, and I think the mix of being a freelancer and an employee sort of is the best way to go, because
Mm.
again, being a freelancer is very lonely. Sometimes it's just working with yourself, and you're not being compensated for a lot of the things. Whereas if you're part of a team, you mitigate a lot of these issues. For me, I think if you can be a freelancer if you have a lot of experience in whatever you're doing. You're really good. You have a past employment record of, like, working for some big companies and stuff like that, and then you're slowly moving out to do your freelance. That's where I think it makes more sense, because you can
Mm.
charge a lot more based on your experience, as well as you probably have some sort of clientele built up because you worked at these companies. You sort of know these people, and when you move out, it's very easy for this company to sort of refer you to their clients. Whereas if you're starting out, where most of our viewers are probably beginners, being a
Mm-hmm.
freelancer is just sort of a middle step to get to an employment status.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
being a freelancer, as you're starting out, you're not going to charge as much as you should, or you
Mm-hmm.
could, because you don't have the experience, as well as your portfolio is not going to be fleshed out. You don't have a portfolio. Again, if you depends on your clients that you work with, but your portfolio might end up looking quite basic, because some of the great work you do probably be under an NDA. If you're
Mm-hmm.
starting out, I would highly suggest freelancing for a bit, but sort of
Yeah.
transitioning to becoming an employee, so that you sort of sharpen your skill at this company or an agency,
Mm-hmm.
deliver some great work, and who knows, you might end up liking it. And then after years, being an employee, you gain a lot of skill. You become such a valuable team member. If you still want to be a freelancer, you can then sort of either juggle it on the side, or you can quit and do it full time, which is what
Yeah.
most
I
people
think
end
yeah,
up doing.
that's a very good route, because I mean I would recommend the same. I don't know about the employee part, but because I've never been an employee. But
Yeah.
again, I would recommend as well, like, yeah,
No,
unless
because
like you
for example,
yeah.
like for you, right?
Mm.
Because you're in uni, you sort of don't feel it because you have something else to do. But
Mm-hmm.
imagine you're not in uni, and the times where you're not working on a project, and
Yeah.
let's say you're
Yeah.
not a
Under
student,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you still need
Mm-hmm.
to get paid, and you still need to pay your bills, and yeah, yeah, all this other
So yeah,
stuff.
that way employees been
Yeah, like as soon as you can get to a stable position, I would recommend that anytime, so that you at least
mm-hmm.
have something to pay your bills. And the thing is, a lot of people say freelance is best. They come from a place of privilege where they
Yeah.
probably don't pay for a lot of things, or they probably have a lot of saved up and stuff like that. But most people
Hmm.
aren't. So if as long as you can get a stable job at a good company, great. That's a great starting point. After that,
Yeah.
you can either freelance on the side, or you can quit once you're financially stable, and then take the risk of being a freelancer.
Yeah. 100% agree, bro. You literally took the words out my mouth, to be honest. But yeah, I would add to that, but we're kind of running out of time. So
Yeah,
let's move on to the pros of being an agency. Now, none of us have like a huge agency. We're trying to build one. We've got a
yeah.
couple of employees and whatever. But I think the main pro of being an agency is like, I actually don't really know. It's like it depends on what you do at the agency, I think. Like some people are like
I
right at
I
the
can.
top, they just manage everything.
The
Some
pro is
people,
the money.
oh, of course, yeah, the money.
Because if
Yeah,
you're an
actually,
agency,
yeah. I think that
not
with
money in
being
the
in,
sense that
yeah,
individual, but the money in the sense of the budgets that you can charge and the projects that
right,
you can work on. Because you have a
because yeah,
team,
yeah,
you can
hmm
take on like a bigger project and charge more. And at the end of the day, your revenue is going to be more than being a freelancer. But
100%, yeah.
excluding revenue in the sense that's gross revenues, the total money that comes in.
hmm
But again, the
But
pro,
I think
yeah,
just as a counter argument to that, as a freelancer, you kind of, let's be honest, like you're trading your time for money, right? But as an agency,
yeah,
let's say
f-
if you're a
fine.
freelancer, you have just to keep things simple, let's say you have 10 hours a week, right, to do
Mm,
work, right?
10 hours
But
a
if you have a team
week.
of like 10, no,
Yeah.
I'm just using it just because it's an easy
Yeah,
number.
yeah,
I don't want
yeah,
to say
yeah. I
like
see.
50 or whatever, right? But
Yeah,
let's say
yeah,
you have 10 hours a week, right, as a freelancer, which is stupid. But let's say you have 10 hours a week to do a project, right?
yeah.
If you have an agency and you have a team of, let's say, 10 people, now you have 100 hours. So it's
Yeah.
like you have a lot more time to spend. And with
Capacity.
more time, you can charge, you can make more money in that way. But again, another, con to that is that you don't keep everything. But
Yeah. Which we
yeah, I
get
mean,
to the cons, but
yeah,
yeah, the pros is
if
just
you play your cards right by having high enough prices and keeping good margins, you can make a lot more money than being a freelancer.
yeah.
Um, and another point of being an agency is just because you have a team, you can approach so many more bigger clients as well. It's
And
like
you
you can
can
go
do
to
a lot
clients.
more. And
Yeah,
in the Webflow space, you can do a lot more fun stuff like
yeah,
clonables and
100%. Yeah,
content and
and
some other.
even your image as well becomes like you kind of go up the hierarchy if you're an agency. It's like people
Yeah.
see you as like, oh, they're an agency, and if you have employees, then and even that image will get you more clients. It'll build your brand, it'll build your exposure,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's like a whole pro, and it leads to so many more benefits. Um, but yeah, I think the main benefits are definitely money, and also if you play, I mean, I think it all depends on what you do and how you actually go about running your agency. You can be very smart about running an agency, and you can be completely hands off and just let the agency do its thing by
Yeah.
hiring the right people. Um, and yeah, you can just like you can be working a couple of hours a week and still be making very, very good money. But then some people, especially when you're first starting an agency, when you're getting used to hiring people, whatever, you kind of get into the mix and you literally like you have no time to you have no free time. You're 100% invested in your agency, and
Yeah.
that is where it can go wrong, right? I think if you to run an agency successfully, you have to hire the right people, which is a con because it's very hard to do that. um but if you
Yeah.
do it
Should we
right,
go?
then
Yeah.
you can like be hands off
Yeah.
and spend very little time on running your agency.
Yeah. I think agencies pro con just the size and the projects that you work on. I
The
think that's
con,
the
so the
major
pros, sorry.
major pro, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And in
And
terms of the
just to
cons, yeah,
yeah,
I think for the cons, it's just the cost of running it. Yes,
cost,
you
yeah,
will charge a lot more, but to be honest, you probably spend a lot more as well. And
100%, yeah.
most of the time, you as the company owner or like the business owner, at least in the first few years, you're not being compensated for the work that they put in. And I
Hmm.
think Shays, I kind of told you like a lot of the company money is not your money. You gotta
Yeah,
take out a salary.
that broke my
Yeah.
heart when I heard
Yeah,
it.
so if you guys are interested in this, you should search up private limited companies
I mean, this is for the
where
people in the UK. We don't know about US,
no,
but it's pretty similar,
it's
right?
pretty much similar in all
Yeah,
rest of
yeah.
the world. If you're a
Okay.
private limited company, you and the business are two different entities, and you
Yeah.
sort of become an employee to yourself, which is a paradox if you think about it. But yeah, if let's say your company makes $1 million, the $1 million isn't yours. You,
Yeah.
you get paid a salary, and of course you get dividends being a shareholder, but you're not going to
But
get
even that, you
pocket.
pay tax on it, isn't
Yeah,
it?
you pay tax on that. You pay tax on your salary. It's pretty much being an employee somewhere else, but you're being an employee to yourself, right?
Hmm.
Though you get shares in the company. So if your company, you do sell it to somebody else, you do get your benefits in terms of share and all of this good stuff. But still, at the end of the day, it's not, you're not pocketing like millions of dollars
Hmm.
because you're an agency owner. There's a lot more things that come after that as well. Plus, there's a lot of expenses being an agency because you pay for
Yeah.
people, pay for tools, and especially with all these freaking tools, the moment you become more than one person, it sort of just exponentially increases. Like
Yeah.
Slack went from
Hmm.
$16 a month to like $150 a month.
Oh, bro,
I saw
trust
it.
me. Like,
I saw it
oh.
yesterday. I'm like, wait, what? $150
Yeah,
a
I did.
month?
Yeah, bro. Yesterday, that's what happened to me. I added more people to my Slack, and it just jumped. I was like,
Yeah, I'm
"What?
like,
Like, when
oh
did this?
shit. And like
When did this
Notion as
happen,
well,
bro?"
it's like a
Yeah,
hundred, two
yeah,
hundred dollars a month. And I'm like, what the hell is going on?
yeah.
So
It's
I can imagine if you
crazy.
have 50 people on Slack and in Notion and Webflow, right? Like three people is like 150,
Oh God.
it's almost $200 a month with the team account.
Yeah.
Now imagine it's like five, six people, it's just like, it's gonna increase. Your cost is gonna skyrocket as you grow,
Mm,
which if you do charge the client enough, you will make a profit. But most of the time you're not paying yourself.
mm-hmm.
Most directors usually pay themselves at the end of the financial year, depending on what's the most tax efficient way to take out the money. But you're not going to be compensated as much as, again, I think I told you this in one of the calls
Mm.
we had. If you are an employee, a high value employee, you're
I'll never
probably
forget that call, bro.
you will probably get paid more than director of the company.
Mm,
And the clear example is Facebook. There are engineers at Facebook that get way more pay than Mark
yeah,
Zuckerberg.
and Mark
Though he,
like, yeah,
he is a billionaire, but most of his net worth comes from his shares and not his money that he holds in his company. But yeah, it's just fascinating to think about it, that people have this sort of misconception of like, if you're a business owner, you're gonna be,
yeah, you're
I mean, there is
rich, yeah,
definitely a lot of benefits of being a business owner, and you accumulate a lot of wealth, but not necessarily in terms of money, but in terms of like shares and bonds and stocks and all this other
yeah,
stuff.
definitely.
And
And I
that
think
went way too
like that
financial.
is like the very technical stuff that's con. But I think another thing that's con, that's a con, is hiring people, bro. Hiring the right people is like people. It's like people think it's easy, right? Oh, yeah, just hire anyone. Like if they can have a
Yeah,
good track record, but there's so many stuff that goes into it. Okay,
yeah,
they can be a good, they can be good at what they do, but then will they fit in the team environment? I think another problem that you mentioned, Vim, is like you want the person to do their own thing, but you want them to do all for one cause, if that makes sense. I think that's what you're trying to like, achieve in your
yeah,
agency. It's
like
like
yeah,
you
which
want
is
everyone to like not be restricted and have no constraints, like they can do their own thing. But you also want
yeah,
them to, when they work for you, you want them to like be as a collective and be a team. So it's
yeah,
like
which is
finding the
a lot
balance, and that is
harder.
so hard.
Yeah, it is very hard. Like it's easier said than
It's very
done, because
psychological, and like it's
yeah,
just,
because
yeah.
yeah, it's just a lot of these things that sort of come into play when you.
Hmm.
I think any business, I think agency, you can pretty much replace it with just any business that you're trying to grow. It's just there's a lot more cons, and the main con is just risky, isn't it? If you lose it,
Yeah.
you lose your money, you lose your time, you lose a lot of the things that you built for. So there's a lot of risk that come to it. But that's
Yeah,
again
because you're
because
not
of that's a
only
lot
like responsible for yourself now, you're
for
responsible
yourself. So
to
yeah, there's
paying
other
everyone,
people.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah, and that kind of like, it's like you still got to get used to it. Like just seeing the invoices and you just got to pay them. You're like,
yeah, bro, it's weird, especially when
it
you're freelancer for
hurts.
so long. You're used to sending invoices, not receiving
Yeah,
them.
it's not
So
receiving
once you
invoices
receive
and
one, it's like, wait, what? But
yeah,
yeah,
it's all
man, I
yeah, it's
think,
just
yeah.
it's
Another thing
just
is like
hard.
an
Yeah.
agency, it can go wrong in two ways, right? Number one is where um it's either you hire people and you already committed to paying them, but then you don't get enough of the flow from the top of the funnel, right? You don't get enough clients
Yeah.
to supply them.
Yeah. Your
But another thing
overheads.
is
Yeah.
where you get too much clients and you don't have enough team members to do the work, and then it gets congested, the
Or
entire
just team
flow.
members sort of,
So
yeah, yeah. That again is a lot of balancing act you gotta do.
yeah,
Like you
up
gotta
and down,
find out.
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just figuring out what you need help with. It's very easy to
Hmm.
be like, oh, I need help with Webflow, but like that could not be the only thing that you need help on. You might need help on
Mm-hmm.
something else. You might need help on like sales, or you're not the best at everything. And to grow a business, you need to get people that are really good at
Yeah, that's right.
one
Yeah.
specific thing and taking over that.
Mm-hmm.
And you should. And again, the thing with a lot of business owners is that they are not probably in power. Yes, they do make the final call, but most of the time they're just listening to the team heads or the employees and just
Mm-hmm.
accepting their opinions. Because at one point, I think Joe mentions this, or you should work with people who are a lot more
Yeah,
talented
well,
than
better
you are.
than you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so at one point you become like the dumbest person in the company, and everybody needs to sort of
uh,
explain a lot of things to you,
that's kind of
which
scary
is,
though, when you think about it.
isn't it, right? Like at one point your employee
Yeah.
is gonna be like, "Hey Vim, I don't think you get it." You're like, "Shit."
Yeah,
But I mean
man,
that
that's
is the
gonna
part
be.
of the thing, because you're focusing on other things as well. You're not just
Yeah.
building Webflow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I mean,
So
just to summarize, I think being an agency is great. Like I think it depends on your personality. I'm a commander, right? So it's like I would love to have an agency just leading people and doing all of that stuff. But at the same time, there's so much stress. There's so much like expenses as well. There's quite a lot of pressure as well. If you're an agency, you expect to have a certain standard, and it
yeah.
all depends on. I mean, just to answer the question, like who would you recommend an agency to? It depends. It's like it depends on your personality. You personally have to, you know, take a look at the pros and cons that we mentioned and weigh it based on your own personality. Like, okay, which one do I rather prefer? Do I think that the value of being a agency is worth the risks of being an agency? And that's all did that will be different with each person. And I
Yeah.
think for me personally, I would I would become an agency, if that makes sense. Like I find the value of being an agency. I think the value of that is a lot higher than the risks of being an agency, in my opinion. I would rather take on the risk, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. It depends on the person. Some people might not think that. Some people might think, yeah, I'd rather not have the stress of being an agency at all. I'd rather
Not
be an
not just the
employee and
stress, it's
whatever.
just the
Yeah,
amount of risk that they can take on. I
yeah,
don't think
exactly.
most people can
Hmm.
sort of afford to take on the amount of risk.
Yeah, but
But
the
yeah,
higher the risk, the greater the reward, as they say. But
Bitcoin 101.
yeah, Bitcoin, yeah. Oh
But yeah,
damn.
I think like most people in general just don't have the financial security to sort of take on something like this. It's sort of a very gradual process. Like they sort of
Hmm.
become an employee and a freelancer, and then they
Yeah.
grow that, and then they become an agency.
Yeah, but
It's
then
very
another
hard.
thing is, sorry to interrupt, but another thing is
Yeah.
like if you become an agency, like okay, let's say you're a freelancer, right, and you choose to become an agency, but then let's say you don't like an agency and you go back to an employee. It's very hard to do that, or am I wrong? Like imagine you start an agency, you have an agency, and you realize you don't like it, and now you want to become an employee. Like
I mean, if you don't
it's
like it,
very
then
is
if you
quite
don't
hard
like
to
it,
do that, right?
then it's probably easier to do it, isn't it? Because you don't like that option, so you might
Mm.
then more chance that you might like this. Again, it really depends.
Right, but then
I
transitioning from an agency to an employee is is it just me, or is that like hard because with the agency you have a team and then you have to tell the team that I would just want to become an employee now. It's easy to transition from an employee to an agency,
Oh, as
but the
in like
opposite
you're.
is very hard.
I mean, if you fail, then there's no option but to go back
Oh
to
right, I
being
see.
a
Yeah, yeah.
freelancer or an employee. But
Mhm.
yeah, if you're running an agency and you can't just jump ship
You can't just
halfway
drop
and do
out,
some.
right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
unless you get someone to replace yourself and then jump
Hmm.
out, sure. But yeah, you can't just jump out like a moving ship. Unless it's sinking,
Yeah,
then yeah, sure, why not just jump out
yeah.
and do something else.
Just as a conclusion, Vim, do you have a conclusion that you want to say, perhaps, or?
I think the main point is just see how much risk that you can take, and I think
Hmm.
a lot of people and beginners sort of don't see it because they're so interested in this thing of freelancing and Webflow and making money that people sort of, even I did, like I sort of felt like, oh, freelancer, you can make a lot more money, why the hell would you be employed, makes no
Hmm.
sense, blah blah blah.
I thought that as well. I
And
can't lie. Yeah.
yeah, and when my mom says like, oh, being an employee, there's a lot of benefits, I was like, who needs it? Like, I can pay for it.
Yeah.
And then once you sort of jump into the real life,
Yeah. Once you experience it.
once no, once the fact that you just gotta pay rent every single month, you're like, right, now I see what you mean,
Mm,
mom. Like I get what you
yeah.
mean. It's a lot easier. because yeah, it's just about how much risk that you can take. If you're at a
Mm.
position where you can't really afford to take a risk of being a freelancer, there's no harm being an employee, right? You again, as I said,
Yeah.
I certainly think it's a very underappreciated role,
100%. Yeah.
especially in this field.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't speak up about it, and a lot of employees sort of don't speak their experience as well.
Mm-mm.
All the people that you hear about Webflow is freelancers and agency owners, but
Mm-hmm.
employees themselves sort of don't speak about their experience and the pros and cons of
Mm-hmm.
it, which sort of skews a lot of the beginners' ideology
Into a
to like
freelancer because that's all they
a
see, right?
freelancer,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're like, oh, I want to make
Yeah.
a lot of money. And that's why I'm also finding it a bit difficult to sort of find people to work with in the industry, because
Mm.
everybody's a freelancer and
Everybody wants to be a freelancer, isn't it?
everybody wants to
Yeah.
be a freelancer. Everybody wants to do their own thing. So it's like,
Mm.
no, man, I just need you to come in and help and just do one thing. And I just want you to do it so well and just don't worry about anything else. It's so difficult to find that. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of companies are finding that difficult as well. Like you see all these job bots that sort of come up. Every agency is looking for a full-time role, but nobody's sort of appreciate, like nobody's applying for it, or nobody qualified wants to do it, which is
Yeah.
bizarre because again, and I think a strong point is that community is sort of just a lot of things that you hear and see is from freelancers and all
Yeah.
this.
It's like the hierarchy is like
It's
agency at the
the
top, then
it's
freelancer, then employees at the
the
bottom.
yeah, the term is called success bias or something like that. You only
Mm.
see the success stories of all these freelancers and agencies that grew, but you
Mm.
rarely ever, or most of the time, you do not hear about the freelancers who just couldn't make it, or the agencies that just fall
Right.
off
Yeah.
or flops, which is probably the majority, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
99% of startups fail, but we only hear about the 1%. Um,
Mm.
again, it's a whole different issue, but yeah, in conclusion, just how much risk that you're willing to take. Just go to whichever position
Yeah.
that you think you're more comfortable with,
Uh,
and neither is better than the other. Being an agency
yeah.
doesn't mean
It
you're
all
better
depends
than
on what you want, what you
yeah,
yeah, it depends on your personality, what you're looking for, and what you value intrinsically.
yeah. and
So
and
yeah.
sometimes it takes time for you to realize, oh, you know what, I don't really enjoy being an employee, I'd rather do it freelance, sure. Or vice versa, right? You could be an agency owner and you'd be like, oh fuck man, I'm so done, I just want to go back to just doing my
Yeah.
9 to 5
That's
and
right.
getting
Yeah.
my breaks and holidays and vacations. Great, why not, right? Like at the end, it just depends whether you're happy at what you're doing and you just feel like you're valued doing what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, now that you say that, it's like a lot of people you hear about a lot of people that they quit being an employee and they start their own agency and they make it, but then you'd never ever ever hear about the people that fail and then go back to being an employee and they
No,
enjoy being an
nobody. No,
employee.
that's the thing,
It's
right?
because
Like
it sounds way less sexy, isn't it? Like,
no, because
oh
nobody
yeah,
posts about
I
it. How
quit
many
my
people
business
post
and then
about
went
their
back to yeah,
failures, isn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
get
it's
as
like
many clicks and views.
yeah,
So
like
yeah, it
in
makes sense.
LinkedIn is
Yeah.
a great example of like people just putting successes up there. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, I quit my job and now I'm building a company that's running thirty
I
thousand
was a
dollars
high
a,
school
a
dropout and all of
yeah, it's
this
like
stuff. It
hundred
just
thousand
sounds
dollars a
good.
month, and I'm having 10 employees. I'm like, shut the fuck
But
up,
then
man.
imagine
Like,
somebody saying, "Oh, I dropped out my agency to become
you
an
see, yeah,
employee." Like,
yeah.
it doesn't
Imagine like
sound as
somebody posts
good.
like, "Oh, I went from a freelancer, I was making this much money. I started doing an agency and I failed and I lost this much money." Nobody's gonna click
Yeah,
on it, and even
nobody.
if they
Yeah,
do, and even if somebody posts that, they probably switch it, be like, "Oh, in life is about learning and all this." It becomes such a
yeah. People
yeah.
don't
Nobody
see. Yeah,
admits to just failing, which is
people
yeah. You
see it
just
at
gotta keep
face
in mind.
value, right? Yeah, you're right, man.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that's why a lot of people, even a lot of my friends sort of have this connotation of like, oh, business man, let's do a
Bro,
startup, let's
trust
make
me.
some money.
Yeah.
I've always, because I've seen, because my parents, my dad, my granddad's been business owners. I know it's not sexy. Like I know how much
Yeah.
work they do and how much stress they go through, and I know how easy it is to fail because I see my dad is a great example. Whenever somebody starts a business and it fails, he tells me about it. It's like, oh, that guy
Mm,
starts he started this business and he did this and it didn't work because he, and I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't he do that? Like it, again, because parents, the way you're brought up.
mm,
For me, I always knew like being a business owner is a lot more risky, and there's a
mm-hmm,
more than 90% chance that you're gonna fail, right? It's very rarely you succeed, and if you do, it's probably luck with a lot of work as well.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think a lot of people should be considerate about the amount of
Yeah.
risk.
I think yeah, that's right. I think just to end it off,
Yeah.
is with a question. What would you rather be, Vin? out of the three options that we talked about?
For me, I think I tried all three.
Yeah, you
And for
did.
me, I always wanted to be like running my own thing, not because it's sexy or
Hmm.
whatever, because I've always seen it since I was young, and I've always seen my granddad in his shop, opening his shop every single day and counting his money. And I like that sort of hustle, and like the nine,
Yeah.
it's not the 9 to 5, it's just about, it's not even for
Hmm.
the money, right? I probably be making more money if I'm employed somewhere. It's
100%.
just,
Yeah.
I just like it. I just like doing it. It's just a lot more fun.
Hmm.
But yeah, again, it depends on what you want, right? Some people might think like, why the hell are you wasting so much time?
Yeah.
It's like you're on call every single day, and like there's no life besides work.
Yeah.
But for me,
That's
it's
right.
always
Yeah.
been fascinating. What about you?
Yeah. For me, I think I mentioned this, but I agree with you. It's agency, and it's not even. And I think there's two reasons. There's a couple of reasons. Like one, firstly, is I was lucky enough to not have the pressure of, having like bills on my head. Although now I do, but when I first started, I had no pressure. Like I had, and nobody really influenced me to do it. I had this intrinsic. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but I had this intrinsic like motivation and driving me, saying that I want to build something, and I just like it. I just have fun doing it, and that's the main thing. And that's pure because I had no pressure of starting a business. Like, bro, I was 17. I had no bills to pay. I had nothing. I didn't have to do it, but I'd done it purely because I just enjoyed it and I like growing and I like, I wanted to prove something, right? I just like growth and building stuff. So yeah, that's the reason why I would rather be an agency because, I started it. I just want to see how far I can take it. And I know for a fact that for me, I prefer doing an agency. I like leading. I want to build something quite big and stuff. And
Yeah,
eventually, I would like to sell it and be very hands off. And I think that agency is the best route to go. Although there will be stress, I think I'm kind of used to it now. To be honest, when I first started, I was like, "Oh, why am I stressing?" But now it's just a daily thing. It's like
yeah,
my mind is thinking, "Oh, why are you stressing?" Um, but then my brain tells me, "You know what? It's normal, bro. Like it happens every day."
yeah.
But
It's just, yeah,
I mean,
and
you never know. Like I'm saying this now. Maybe in 10 years' time, I might change my mind.
yeah.
But
Again,
right
it's all,
now,
it's just,
that's
yeah,
that's what. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. And
Cool.
I think even for my future self, I'm like estimating that I would want to be an agency. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Again,
that's
just
what we'll
depending
do.
on, yeah, amount of risk. Again, this, the thing that I think nobody talks about is just how much risk are you willing to take? That's it. Like if you can
Mm.
answer that question, you sort of know
And
like
yeah,
what
that all
what you want to
depends on
do.
your situation and personality. So
Yeah.
cool.
Cool. Do you have anything else?
Nothing else to be honest. That was actually a good episode. I really enjoyed that. So guys, that was it. We talked about how you can be a freelancer. Sorry, we talked about the pros and cons of a freelancer, an employee and an agency. Um, if you did enjoy the episode, make sure you leave a like. If you have any suggestions for any more episodes in the future, make sure you leave a comment and make sure they subscribe and turn on the bell notification because we're very, very close to 200 subs. Um, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week or perhaps this Friday. Depends if we upload Alt Talk. But we'll see you next week for sure. All right, guys. Take care.
Cool.
Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye bye.